There sure were a lot of fighting games released in the 90s, huh? If you were around at the time, you know all about it. It's crazy to think about in retrospect. Street Fighter II releases in 1991 and creates the basis for the entire 2D fighter genre, sparking a huge surge in interest. 2 years later, Virtua Fighter releases and creates the 3D fighter. This primed fighting games of all kinds to explode all over the soon-to-be-released PlayStation 1 in 1994. 2D, 3D, weird, hybrids, you name it. And nowhere was the fighting game bigger than in Japan, with its strong arcade culture that birthed the genre in the first place, making it a true mecca for all kinds of releases. However, a curious phenomenon occurs when there's a great surge of market demand for a particular type of game and innumerable companies who want to take advantage of it. Many of them are bad. So I'd like to take you on a trip today through some Japanese-only fighting games that are extremely cursed. And when I say cursed, I mean very cursed. This is not me making fun of slightly quirky or unpolished games. I'm the kind of guy who could probably make a 15-minute video about why Evil Zone genuinely kicks ass.
Your Ultra Death Attack! Karen, you're too much.
I'm a fighting game appreciator, but I'm also about to tunnel the bar straight to hell with what I'm going to show you. Let us begin. Starting with a macho name for a decidedly unmacho game, Fist, released in late 1996, is a 3D fighter about pretty girls competing in some kind of hazily defined tournament for the right to become an idol. Nowadays, failed idols just become VTubers, but back then you had to inflict violence upon others. Oh, how the times change. The opening animation is pretty decent and has a nice song, although I love how the compression is so bad that it renders the subtitles nigh illegible. The only game modes available are Scenario and Versus, the former just being the standard arcade mode where you pick a character and fight all the other characters. Not even a training mode, which is shockingly bare bones even for 1996. But whatever, let's pick one of 8 characters and get to fighting. It is a bit rough. The game copies the fundamentals of the Virtua Fighter series with a 3-button arrangement: punch, kick, and guard. But it plays significantly worse since characters barely have any moves at all. There's maybe a couple of attack strings and command normals per character, but other than that, most of the cast shares extremely similar basic movesets. There's not a lot that makes anyone in particular stand out. It's also an extremely unresponsive game. You can probably tell just by looking at it, but just to emphasize, when you press an attack or try to dash, you'll do the input and most of a second later, your move will actually come out. It feels really jerky and just awful to control. There's also no sidestepping of any description, so it isn't even a true 3D fighter. This is functionally a 2D game, except sometimes attacks can knock people off axis in weird ways, but you can't intentionally do anything with this. In the end, unable to do much of interest, I just devolved into using this downward strike move a lot. It controlled a decent amount of space, seemed pretty good at catching whiffed buttons, and did alright damage. But whatever, so the game is bad, slow, and extremely unresponsive Virtua Fighter. That's clearly not what the appeal is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the characters. So who do we got? We've got a high school girl, naturally. Girl in a teddy bear outfit, girl in a Playboy bunny outfit, a ninja, a gymnast, a rich white girl, and inexplicably 2 random men, which sort of seems like it defeats the objective here, but ain't nobody said a man can't be an idol. I respect it. Now, it's pretty brave to pin your entire prospects on your ability to market the looks of your characters when early polygonal graphics are what they are, but it did work for Tomb Raider, so what do I know? The game's only extra mode is a mode where you can look at the character models in more detail, so this was clearly meant to be the focus and main selling point. Just to calibrate your understanding here, this game released in late 1996, which would have put it after both Tekken 2 and Virtua Fighter 2, and while Fist is absolutely noticeably rougher than either of those titles, I won't be hyperbolic and say it's like outstandingly ugly. It's a bit plain, sure, and maybe my brain is too cooked from all the bad games I play for this channel, but it gets a lot worse than this. In fact, it'll get worse right now. See, as I was playing the game, trying to see what moves it was possible to do, I check the manual and find that every character only has about 5 moves or strings listed, and since there's no in-game way to check the move list proper, and it's unfortunately quite common for these older games to not have the complete move list in the manual, I instead hit up Google and pretty quickly find a game FAQs guide with a more complete-looking move list. Shoutouts to Zachary1021, showcasing that there is no fighting game too obscure for someone not to have labbed. But then as I actually start trying to do the stuff listed, I can't get any of it to come out. As I sit here, wondering if I just have the worst execution known to man, I notice the guide I'm looking at lists itself as specifically being for the Saturn version. Now, the Saturn and PS1 versions of Fist came out at almost the same time, with the PS1 version being a little over 2 weeks after the Saturn release. So I made the initial vague assumption they were pretty much the same, but now I wasn't so sure and I proceeded to immediately derail my own video and check out the Saturn version.
85、56、84なの。青森出身の女の子。勝っちゃったもんね。
I was very, very wrong about them being the same. Saturn Fist is outstandingly ugly. This is a horror show. Oh my god, what on earth happened here? Everyone's face looks like it's been crudely drawn on with crayon, good lord. Playing through the PS1 version, I certainly thought it was bad, but I honestly didn't think it was quite bad enough for one of my videos. But then I tried the Saturn version, and I thought you guys needed to experience this discovery the same way I did, even if we've already strayed from the target platform. Except, you know what's crazy? You know what's so absolutely unbelievable about this unfathomably nightmarish-looking production? It plays fine. Much better than the PS1 version at any rate. Inputs are more responsive across the board, characters have significantly more moves, and there are many more character-specific tools that give the cast unique gameplay identities. Like Teddy Bear Girl is sporting a unique attack which armors mids and highs, which gives her a god-given right to get in unless you're able to check it with lows. Gymnast Girl has rolls that make her highly evasive. And one of the random dudes has an infinite O. Look, balance isn't the strong suit of any of the games I'll be showing in this video, they're pretty much all broken in some way, but even the good games of the time had pretty crazy stuff, so it's not a severe outlier. Now, I still would not call the core gameplay here good, you can't really schmoove in a satisfying way, but it resembles a functional Virtua Fighter knockoff in this incarnation. Even though it is pretty funny how throws have zero startup, there is no throw teching, and you can seemingly cancel your dashes into them, so you're at constant risk of getting unreactively thrown at close ranges. There's even a launcher and juggle system which lets you construct something that resembles an actual combo. Don't get me wrong, there's still no compelling reason to play this over any given Virtua Fighter game, which you probably would have owned if you were a Saturn owner at the time. But the fact Saturn Fist plays noticeably better and has more mechanics than PS1 Fist, which as far as I can tell, completely removed juggles entirely, is bewildering to me. What happened here? Like I said earlier, these two versions released 2.5 weeks apart from each other, certainly not enough time to rework the visuals and systems to that extent. It seems more likely that these two versions were developed in parallel, and as a result ended up with divergent visuals and mechanics. They do, however, share the same soundtrack and voice cast, which are genuinely good, the saving grace of many a crappy game. Fist has pretty damn good music, even though some of it doesn't really fit the characters they're supposedly for, like this slow number being for the hulking pro wrestler of the cast. Still, it's a pretty good song in a vacuum. As a random aside, this game was made by developer Genki, otherwise mainly known for the Tokyo Extreme Racer games and also Jade Cocoon. This was not a completely amateur production even at that point in time. So that's Fist, an awkward little game with an extremely bizarre version split. Do you play the okay-looking but fundamentally dull as dishwater PS1 version, or the slightly smoother Saturn version with the caveat that every character will look like they've been repeatedly stung by bees? Personally, I think I'd like to move on and try something non-3D entirely. Let's see what we've got.
準備運動が足りないようね。
The Master's Fighter, released in late 1997, developed by Korean company Unico, now known as Uniana, who are mainly notable for the translation and distribution of Konami's various arcade games in Korea. But they made a few original titles too, although original might be a bit too generous, as we'll see. Interestingly, Master's Fighter contains an English language option despite only being released in Japan. This is a Korean-made game released exclusively on Japanese PS1s with an English language setting. Now that's what I call a World Warrior. And indeed we have a cast of 11 characters to choose from, each representing a region in a fairly blatant copying of the format of Street Fighter 2. Which is not inherently a problem, but let's actually start fighting.
Round 1. Fight!
There's kind of a lot going on here, but the first thing I noticed was the random purple pixels scattered on the character I picked. How does this even happen? It's reminiscent of a palette glitch, but this is a PS1 game. They don't work like that. This is just baked into the sprite. How would this even happen? In general, everything here is a mess. Characters animate at completely inconsistent speeds relative to each other, and even internal to themselves with certain moves, and the overall sprite quality is bizarrely low. Everyone looks like if you resized a sprite wrong in MS Paint. It gives off a bootleg-type impression, despite this being a licensed and official PS1 game. It plays like a bootleg too. Master's Fighter is a 4-button game, King of Fighters style. 2 punch buttons and 2 kicks, with motion inputs for specials. But there's something really wrong with the input parser, because I was hard-pressed to even get regular quarter circle motions to work half the time. I would in no way claim to be an execution lord, but I have definitely played enough Super Turbo in my life to not fail Hadoukens this much. In fact, very frequently I would do a motion, press a button, and not even get the normal. Just nothing would come out at all. It's straight up eating inputs like a third of the time. As for fundamental systems, in most 2D fighting games, combos tend to follow a structure of something along the lines of light normal, heavy normal, cancel to special, maybe a super if you've got the bar for it and are feeling fancy. Most games will ground themselves in foundational rules like this to make it easier to jump from character to character. You might not be able to learn the most optimal route, but if you understand the rules, you can generally put together something functional. Master's Fighter innovates and streamlines this system even further by, removing combos. You can't really do them in this game. Okay, there's not no combos, but comboing normals into each other is extremely restrictive and you cannot cancel anything into a special, let alone super. This is a game of largely single blows only. Speaking of supers, when you're low on health, your name starts flashing and you get access to a powerful super. Makes sense, it's like Tekken Rage Art or some such. One chance to make a big comeback. Right? Of course not. Taking a page out of the first Guilty Gear's book, for some reason, you can simply do supers an infinite number of times. This could present a massive issue if, say, one character's super is just to spawn a massive explosion on top of the opponent that does 90% of their health. I doubt this is even the game's most egregious super. I couldn't really scope most of them since due to the input buffer being so whack and the super motions usually being very annoying things like double half-circle inputs, I could barely get them to come out half the time. It's like that one Simpsons bit where Mr. Burns has every disease. The game is so broken that it prevents questionable design choices from being exploited properly. Now, there are lots of highly broken games that are still fun to play, but there's one tumor so malignant here that it largely stymies any attempt to enjoy it even through that lens, because Master's Fighter is riddled with infinites. Or perhaps I should say infinite. Singular. But it's one pretty much the entire cast can do in some way. Whenever someone is knocked down and gets back up, there's a frame or two, I don't actually know how long the window is, doesn't matter, where you cannot block at all. This means if you score a knockdown in the corner, you can just keep sweeping someone as soon as they stand up for a functional infinite. This works for every character, on every character, and you can't do anything during those frames where you cannot block. There's no window to execute any sort of invincible reversal, not that I think any even exist in the first place. This essentially turns the game into slightly more complicated and incredibly janky dive kick where one mistake ends the round right then and there. Or at least it would against a human opponent. The AI is mercifully unable to really take advantage of the broken system. You may have noticed I haven't really bothered to explain what characters actually do so far, and this is why. You're not evaluating characters from the more conventional standpoint, you're evaluating them based on how easily they can cause a knockdown to start a touch of death. And this game is pretty weird about what does and does not do that. Takuya here is kind of your Mew clone. He's got fireballs and a Tatsumaki equivalent, has an excellent sweep that's a game ender by itself. Actually, that looks exactly like Mew's. Is that even legal? Probably not. But regardless, this is a fast sweep that is pretty easy to loop into itself. Furthermore, the Tatsu thing actually links into sweep in one of the rare combos this game provides, and the Tatsu itself is fast, goes considerable distance, and hits overhead. So Takuya has pretty much everything a character needs in this game, which is quick access to a knockdown and a way to be next to you to loop it. But that's inefficient. Hitting the opponent with a bunch of sweeps takes too long. What if I fall asleep and forget to press crouching heavy? Or just fuck up the timing because I'm bad at fighting games. Okay, please leave me alone. No problem, mate. Just pick Long, our Fei Long type, who, while his sweep isn't as fast as Takuya, can stick out a massive hitbox on the opponent's wake-up that will delete 90% of their life. Why time several normals when you can just do one motion and win? I remind you again, this is unblockable. But you have to actually get close enough to do it, which can be a little tricky. What if you just don't want to play neutral at all? No problems again, mate. Just pick Michelle, who despite being cursed to have a crouching heavy kick that doesn't knock down, instead has this slide kick that goes half screen, is extremely active, and indeed, knocks down. One incorrectly thrown round start fireball costs your opponent the entire round as you simply shin kick them to death. Mostly. For some reason I found cornered slide kick just didn't hit some characters on their wake up. I don't know why, man, you're asking the wrong guy, nothing makes sense here. Incidentally, check out this footage of me slowly realizing this old man Sonic Boom type move not only causes a knockdown, it actually hits as an overhead, meaning you have to block it standing. Overhead Sonic Boom. I'm sure there's some game out there that has something like that, but I've never seen that before. What a weird game. I'm not going to iterate every character's ability to instantly kill you, you get the idea, hopefully. If a character has a sweep that knocks down, they have a way to infinite you, but every character can get there with a special move at the very least. And to top it all off, the bow on this bootleg-looking mess of a game, pretty much all the characters are plagiarized. If you know your S&K, you've been screaming this at the screen from minute one, but genuinely every single character, all of them, are traced from an existing fighting game. To the point where it would take a long time to enumerate all of the theft going on here. Most of them are traced from Garou or The Art of Fighting. This guy is from Samurai Spirits and is real obvious at that. There's at least one ripped from World Heroes, which is a pretty obscure pull. And all kinds of random attack frames are jacked from Street Fighter 2. This is presumably one of the reasons the game looks so ugly, because of the mix and matching of animation frames from games with different character sprite sizes, among other things. I can find no record of any litigation that arose as a result of this, despite the fact this absolutely seems actionable to me. I wouldn't find this super surprising if it was nothing more than an obscure domestic Korean arcade release that flew under the radar, but this was a Japanese PS1 release that got a professional review in Famitsu. Of 13 points out of 40, by the way, which is still somehow not the lowest score the magazine's ever given. As a final unblockable straight to my groin, this game is quite rare, meaning if you want to behold this game with your own hands as the glorious thing that it is, you'll need to pay up in the triple-digit zone for it. Still cheaper than Ancient Roman, but I can't say I think it was worth that price. Next game, please. What am I looking at here? Shura No Mon, released in April 1998, based on a very popular martial arts manga of the same name. I try to avoid licensed games for videos like this because I feel like it's too low-hanging fruit, and also this is a license I don't really know anything about, and that runs the risk of making a video like this come off as a little shallow, but I'm willing to make an exception because I just don't think I'll have that problem this time. The game opens on almost 2 full minutes of this guy doing martial arts poses. I think it's trying to show off its visual fidelity like Tekken does with its Enbu sequences, but Shura No Mon has no real story mode to speak of despite being based on an existing series, and it also has no training mode. Why do none of these games have a training mode? Anyway, feast your eyes on perhaps the finest 3D battling to grace the PlayStation 1. To once again calibrate your understanding of what you're looking at, a 1998 release date would have put it just slightly after the Japanese PS1 release of Tekken 3. Famitsu awarded the game a total score of 12 points out of 40, the lowest score ever awarded in the magazine's history, with the reviewer of the 4 who awarded it the lowest score having this to say:
Cho yabai. Honto ni kanseihin ka.
And really, they nailed it. This is a fighter that barely feels one step above Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Stiff, lifeless polygons awkwardly gesticulate at each other in a crass simulacrum of mixed martial arts, and even then the martial arts are barely mixed since half the cast are karate practitioners who share about 80% of their moveset with each other. I know I'm gonna get a comment about this, I do know it's pronounced karate, but if you say it like that in the middle of a sentence with my accent, I sound like I'm trying way too hard. Let it go, okay? I like how when you win, the opponent just stands there for a second or two before awkwardly crumpling. It's a pretty good representation of the game's response time. There is also no voice acting, at all, which is a bit surreal and seems like it misses the point of a manga tie-in game a little. Load times are also extremely long, on average half a minute. What is it even loading when the game looks like this? But okay, what actually is the system here? It's a little weird. Square and triangle pressed on their own do light attacks, square and triangle pressed with a direction do mediums, and circle does heavy attacks. I never really figured out the combo system. There's sort of a light to medium to heavy type arrangement where normals can cancel into each other, but it's picky about range, character, and the rules for what you're allowed to cancel into a heavy completely escaped me. Attacks also only cancel on hit. You can't do any sort of block string type pressure to mix the opponent up with highs and lows. You can press the L1 or L2 button to do a sidestep. This one is actually a real 3D game, unlike Fist, and you will need to do this since the R1 button is mapped to a character's special move. Every character has at least one special, and they are all unblockable as far as I could tell. Yes, this wheel kick thing is this character's special. You'd be forgiven for not being able to tell since it doesn't really look distinct from heavy normals. While we're here, here's the funniest special I have ever seen in a fighting game.
First, discombobulate.
When I first heard this, I physically recoiled in my seat and reached to pull my headphones off because I thought something broke. It really just makes that noise. Most specials send the opponent a considerable distance on hit, presumably because they are unblockable, but this one crumples the opponent next to you, meaning unless they roll away in this situation, you can just do the move again on their wake up for free damage. Very cool. There's also a throw, done by pressing forward and circle. Oh sorry, my mistake. You grab by pressing forward and circle. This is not the same thing as throwing, because why would it be? Once you have grabbed the opponent, you need to input a specific sequence in order to actually do a throw, during which time the opponent can tech with back and circle. Most characters can throw with a simple square plus triangle input, but a few characters have special bespoke throw inputs where you need to quickly rattle off a raging demon type sequence in order to execute a more powerful throw. So I really hope you have the manual on hand to check for which characters this is necessary, or you just can't throw the opponent functionally. The fact throws work like this also means it is largely impossible to tech an AI throw because they can input their throws with perfect speed. This guy, for instance, has this throw where he just punches you in the head, and there's a very similar move in Tekken where if you guess wrong, you take some damage and then the throw ends. In this game, if you keep missing this tech, you just die. I don't even really know what the counterplay to this is. I'm sure it does exist, but it's funny that this can even happen. But you can't rely on throws, since you may lose the ability to even do them at all. Certain moves, mainly grabs and some characters have special parries, can break limbs, usually arms, but sometimes legs. If you've got a broken arm, you lose access to any moves that would use said arm and also the ability to throw. So if you're playing as one of the two wrestler-type characters who mainly rely on their command throws, getting an arm broken locks them out of their entire game plan, so that's fun. If you get both of your arms broken, you completely lose the ability to block. Broken legs will lock you out of being able to dash, and speaking of dashing, you may notice this game doesn't have a round timer. I noticed you can re-enable the round timer in the options and found out very quickly why it's off by default. There is no forward run in this game, a la Tekken, so there is absolutely nothing you can do against an opponent who gets the first hit and just backdashes infinitely, because backdash and forward dash are the same speed. This is one of those extremely basic 101 level mistakes you rarely see even in quite bad games because 5 seconds of thought will usually cause a designer to realize what the problem here is. This is why in 99% of all fighting games, forward movement is more mobile than backwards. Hell, in Tekken, if you sprint forward for long enough, your sprint becomes an unblockable tackle. The game gives you a way to get in against an opponent exclusively trying to just run away. Even Fist understood this by having a forward run. Even Fist could think this far ahead. Shura No Mon found the bottom of the barrel and then dug a new basement out of it. The fact they had enough awareness of this problem to disable the round timer by default, but not enough to just make forward movement slightly stronger, really elevates this to a realm where I cannot even begin to fathom the thought process. This is, however, the only game in this video that makes any sort of attempt to mix things up with an alternate game mode, sporting the 100-man Kumite mode. Every other game just had an arcade mode where you fight the CPU, and that's your lot. In this mode, you fight 100 CPU opponents, but they're very weak and die fast, while you are very strong and have lots of health. It's still just CPU battles, obviously, but most fighting game single-player content is just finding ways to remix CPU battles. It falls a little flat due to the game being just no good on the fundamental level, of course, but it's something to do. You can also unlock one of the 4 hidden characters every time you clear arcade mode, but as a final cheap out, the game has no memory card support at all, so you cannot save these hidden characters. If you power the game off, they're gone. Unlock them again, stupid. Can you imagine trying to run a tournament for this game and having to manually unlock the characters on every setup because you can't even run a memory card to each one? But you might not want to do that. In the one and only tournament I found for this game on Nico Nico Doga, the tournament almost instantly derails due to the secret characters as the players quickly found a bug where selecting one of them causes the CPU to automatically assume control of them. And they spend like 30 minutes trying to debug it. You cannot intentionally set a CPU to control characters in versus mode. This is not supposed to be a thing at all. I tried to replicate this myself and genuinely couldn't. This game is quite possibly literally cursed. Ghosts is my only explanation for that. There are ghosts in the disc. The game is haunted. I've arranged this video in what I believe to be descending order of quality, and I certainly believe Shura No Mon deserves the bottom billing here. Fist is a janky and heinously ugly Virtua Fighter knockoff, but it retains about enough of the fundamentals to still be recognizably playable. Master's Fighter is a systemically broken Street Fighter knockoff with literally plagiarized assets, where the game is so broken that it results in a shallow and volatile experience. But if the enduring Hokuto no Ken scene is any indication, people can find some sort of joy in that. Shura No Mon, meanwhile, is just... what do you make of this? I have no idea how to even begin to seriously evaluate the systems here. I'm sure it's possible to play with some degree of intentionality, just about any fighting game can be made into a memorable evening with the right people and probably also alcohol, but Shura No Mon gives itself so little to work with even in that field with its plain visuals and totally lifeless bouts. Plus the looming possibility that your character may be possessed by a ghost in the middle of the fight, which I don't know if any respectable FGC member would consider an acceptable risk. That's meant to be more of a horror gamer thing, and you know what, I should probably get back to that soon. But this fighting game detour has been fun. Thanks for joining me. Just kinda wanted to make something relatively light and simple while I plug away at more elaborate videos. If you can think of a fighting game somehow worse than Shura No Mon, please let me know, because I'd love to see what could possibly top that. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and supporting the channel on the Patreon, where you get advanced access to these videos and your name in the credits. Ad revenue is consistently inconsistent, so this is much appreciated. Alright, thanks for watching. See you next time.